let's discuss TBRs. Shall we? We shall. Okay, so I kept alluding to in some of my previous-ish videos, it's been a while since I filmed, I've been in a reading slump. Okay, I mentioned in previous videos that I did make myself a TBR for 2023. It's right here, my cat ripped it, it's okay. Have I been following it? Depends what you mean by follow, to be completely honest. I've read about like 10 to 12, 10, I was highballing it there with 12. I've read about 10 books of the 52 so far, and it's the end of March. Can't believe it's the end of March, but I wanted to run through what's on that list just because I said that I would. Will I continue to be following it? Kind of. You know what? I'm really, really bad at following long TBRs. I'm learning this about myself. I like TBRs of maybe like 5 books, but this is just like, there's so many, like I'm a mood reader. My mood has been shifting. I put way too many classics on this list. And that's okay, because we don't have to limit it to this year. Some of these books are huge. Have I started any of the huge ones? No, I haven't. I have not. So here we are, trapped in the amber of this particular moment. Thank you, Kurt Vonnegut. Speaking of Kurt Vonnegut, he is indeed on this list. A lot of them are like right here. Oh, should we twist this? Yes, we shall. The first book on this list, we have The Canterbury Tales. Very intimidated. I have this beautiful edition. I have like 4 editions of this freaking book because I keep thinking, oh, each time I buy a new edition, this edition's gonna magically make me excited to read it. I'm not very excited to read it. I just feel like I should, and so I want to. The Decameron by Giovanni Boccaccio, which I did start reading. I've got about 100 pages in, and I wanted to like take notes on it, and I never did. So there we are. The Poetics by Aristotle, which is basically nonfiction of him breaking down why we like tragedies and the different plot points of tragedies. So kind of like a writer's guide. We have 2 books that kind of complement each other. We have Don Quixote, which is right here. I'm so excited to read this, therefore so intimidated to read this because I want to love it. We have Don Quixote, and then we have the Sir Thomas Malory. I didn't think this through. We have the King Arthur books. We have Le Morte d'Arthur. I'd be fine if I read one. We're not going to worry about it. Don Quixote is kind of like a riff on the King Arthur tales, right? It's like the quixotic fable of we romanticize a certain thing in our life, so we try to be like this character, but it's not going to be like that, you know? So it's kind of, it's like a farce. We have Edith Wharton's House of Mirth. I've never read a book by Edith Wharton, and I'm excited about it. So this is an American classic set during Edwardian times, or written during Edwardian times. We also have The Prince by Machiavelli on this. I am actually really excited to read this. That's where we get Machiavellianism. A little bit of evil, I don't know, by any means necessary to reach the end, I think is the concept there. I want to read 2 Shakespeare plays. I don't really care what they are. I have a lot, and I haven't really read that many of them. I would love to get to Antony and Cleopatra, and I would love to maybe get to Othello. Maybe we have King Lear here. I'm really leaning towards Twelfth Night, so kind of either of these. I love these Pelican editions. I think they're beautiful. One of the only Jane Austen books that I haven't read yet is Northanger Abbey, which is also a quixotic fable, kind of a riff on, not like dramas and horrors, or she's riffing on The Mysteries of Udolpho by Anne Radcliffe, which I have right here. This is a book that I have never read in full, but I've read bits of it. We have The Divine Comedy by Dante. I'm really intimidated because I really want to love this. And I think I could potentially really love this. It's like going on journeys to the layers of hell. Fascinating. So I want to read The Golden Ass, which is heralded as one of the, like, I think there's like 6 surviving novels from this time, and this is one of them. So is Daphnis and Chloe. Read Daphnis and Chloe a while ago, loved it. But this is about a dude who's kind of a jerk, so he gets turned into an asshole. Or he gets turned into a donkey because he's an asshole. Essentially is what I've gathered from the synopsis. I also really want to read Ovid's Metamorphosis. I've been meaning to get to that sooner than later. I've been meaning to. And then we have a few modern novels that I really want to get to. So the one that's on the Women's Prize long list this year is The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. I loved Hamnet. Who didn't? That's following Lucrezia de Medici. Electra by Jennifer Saint. Ariadne by Jennifer Saint was probably one of the most well done and most historically accurate, or accurate to the original stories it was retelling. So I loved Ariadne. Can't wait to read Electra. I love the House of Atreus story. Joan by Catherine J. Shen, which I did start reading. I got 50 pages into it, and then the Women's Prize long list came out. I thought this would be on it. It obviously wasn't. Alrighty. I also would really like to read The Seven Moons of Mali Almeida sooner than later. I've really been wanting to get to this one. This recently won the Booker. It's set in Sri Lanka between life and death. Sounds really good. I've heard nothing but great things. And again, it won the Booker. And then a book that I have read already off the list is Companion Piece by Allie Smith. I love Allie Smith. I didn't, however, love this installment in her seasonal quartet, now 5 books series. I really loved the seasonal quartet in itself, like all the books, some more than others, of course, but I, generally speaking, really loved the whole thing. I love Allie Smith's stream of consciousness style. She's very, very rooted in contemporary times, which I think is fascinating, and I think will be really interesting for future readers to look back on these times when it's, again, so rooted in the now. But I think I've just been in such a reading slump that I just didn't like it at the time that I was reading it. I couldn't connect to it, and it was about the pandemic, and a book that I have already read. Look at me go. A Man Called Uwe. I didn't know what this was about going into it. Trigger warnings for thoughts of suicide. Seriously, this book is all about that. I was very overwhelmed when I discovered that in an airport while I was reading it. I started crying, okay? Like, how did I not know that that's what this was about? This has been out for such a long time. But anyways, it's about an old dude, and then he bonds with people, and it's cute. It was like a 3-star read for me. The end made me give it a 4, but it's about a 3-star read for me. Cute, worth the read. I don't think it's like completely life-changing, and I felt like it was slightly trite at points, but moving. It was moving. It was a good story. We have some classics. I love Virginia Woolf. If I could write like one person, it would be Virginia Woolf. Hands down. Whoa. And Kurt Vonnegut. Imagine blending Virginia Woolf and Kurt Vonnegut a little bit. How would that be done? That could be done, I'm assuming. Just picture it. Use your imagination. And we have Orlando. I really want to read, which is about like a gender fluid, non-conforming human. Also, would really like to read The Waves by Virginia Woolf, which I believe someone just told me this was their favorite book of all time or something, which amazing. Like, it's gonna be amazing. It's Virginia Woolf, super stream of consciousness. I heard this was the most challenging of all her novels just because it's extremely stream of consciousness. I'm assuming very similar to that bridge period into The Lighthouse, the time passing moment. If this is that whole situation, it's going to take me a long time to read this, but I'm going to love it. I would also really like to read another George Eliot this year. I haven't read from her in a while, and she's one of my favorite writers, up there with Virginia Woolf and Kurt Vonnegut. I'd say Kurt Vonnegut and George Eliot, but they're all up there having a party. They're having a good time. So I'd be fine reading either of these. We have The Lifted Veil and Brother Jacob, which these are 2 short stories, so this is probably way more manageable with my reading hectic schedule that's a non-schedule kind of going on recently. And Adam Bede, really thick. Her books take a while to read because of her language, but she's a beautiful, beautiful writer. So many long books on this freaking list. I really want to read another Thomas Hardy. I've only read Tess of the D'Urbervilles, really loved it, and I feel like I could really love his other works and his view of the world and his nature writing, his writing of the landscape. I really want to read Far from the Madding Crowd. I think that's his most famous or well-beloved work. You know what was on the list? Crossed it off because I rock, but this book ruined my life this year. Little Woman. I'm not a fan of Little Woman. Loved the movie, but definitely not a fan of the book. It totally put me in a reading slump. And here we are now. So yeah, I was on a roll and it took me off course. big mad at that book. Okay, another kind of chunkster classic is The Female Quixote by Charlotte Lennox. Can you sense a theme? I want to read this at the time that I read Don Quixote and maybe the King Arthur, like the De Mort d'Arthur books, because I feel like it's all going to be a vibe. Oh my gosh, and Northanger Abbey. I'm ambitious. Elective Affinities by, I can never pronounce his name right, but I'm going to say Goethe. Okay, here. He wrote The Sorrows of Young Werther, which is one of my favorite books of all time. Also, Napoleon's favorite book of all time, according to the internet. The Two Russians. If I don't read Dostoevsky this year, I'm going to be so disappointed in myself. And I don't like being disappointed in myself. I need to read Crime and Punishment. I need to do it. I'm intimidated. I don't know why I'm intimidated. People love that. That's a lot of people's favorite book. It's gonna be fine. First Love by Turgenev. I already read this. I haven't thought about it too much since I read it, and it felt like the type of book that you would think about a lot after you read it while you were reading it. Did that make sense? Hopefully you followed. This is about this boy telling the story of his first love. It's a little twisted. So I ended up giving it 4 stars, and I settle it firmly there, but that's a really great read, and I think it has a lot of psychological depth and insight. And then on this list, we have 2 Hemingway books because of the wonderful things he does. Already read one of them. That was A Movable Feast. Okay, so this is his kind of nonfiction living in Paris and being friends with F. Scott Fitzgerald and going to the Shakespeare and Company bookstore and meeting all these other literary people, right? Talking about his opinions of books and things like that. Him living his best life. I gave this a 3-star after I read this, but I've thought about this book a lot since I finished it. That's a good one. I like A Movable Feast. If you haven't yet read it, I know it's really popular, but if you haven't yet read it, I'd recommend it. I'd recommend reading it, especially if you're interested in literature. It's a great one. And then the other Hemingway, we have The Sun Also Rises. I can't believe I haven't read Toni Morrison yet in my life. I really want to read The Bluest Eye. Or Beloved, because I have Beloved as well, but I'm leaning towards The Bluest Eye, so I really hope to get to that. I will be very upset if I don't read Toni Morrison this year. Wow, that was hard to say. Another book on the list that I have read is Revolutionary Road by Richard Yates. Really loved this look at domestic life in the 50s, and these 2 characters that have married each other, and I keep picturing Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet because that's who plays them in the movie. They have these grand romantic ideas of life. This is about romanticism and reality, and they have these grand romantic ideas of life, and it's kind of quixotic in that way as well. So reality just knocks them down. It's their relationships with their neighbors and their desires in life and what the life that they're actually living. Big fan of Revolutionary Road. I've thought about that one a lot since I've read it. On the list, we also have The Stranger by Camus. I did read this in high school, but I need to reread it because I didn't pay attention to it too much. It's existentialist. Saul Bellows' Mr. Sandler's Planet. I read Seize the Day by Saul Bellow a while ago, which was basically about the American dependency on the stock market and capitalism. And that was a really interesting read, a short read. It wasn't my favorite thing of all time, but I'm really excited to read more Saul Bellow. Kurt Vonnegut loves, excuse yourself, desk. Kurt Vonnegut loves Saul Bellow, so I will love Saul Bellow too. Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. This was something else. This was another thing that I read in high school. I want to actually, I said reread it for The Stranger, but I want to actually read it now. Again, existentialist. I love existentialism. It makes the most sense to me. It really does. It really does. Okay, what else do we have on the list? We have Cannery Row by Steinbeck, because I read Of Mice and Men by Steinbeck and loved it. I want to love Steinbeck. I think he's just like a beautiful man in every single way, shape, and form. I love his thoughts. I love the way he sees the world. I love he has like this deep, earthy wisdom that's beautiful. And I read Grapes of Wrath by Steinbeck. I've said this before. Not a fan. But I feel like, and To a God Unknown I read by Steinbeck and I didn't love, but I loved Of Mice and Men. It was one of my favorite books of last year, and I feel like I'm really gonna love him, so I need to keep going. I'm really motivated. And yes, like I've read a few of his letters and quotes, and he's just a stunning human being. A stunning human being, okay? The Cloven Viscount by Italo Calvino, which I did read in a reading blog earlier this year. Not a fan. Magical realism. Guy cut in half, falling in love, evil dude, good dude. Neither are fantastic. The Story of the Eye by George Bataille, which I did read, which is all about eroticism, basically, metaphor of death, about shame and sexuality, and I loved the two main female characters. I feel like the main male narrator was almost kind of like a passive, the everyman voice in terms of his relationship with eroticism and sexuality. But then we had the two female characters, which were the opposites of each other, right? So we had the female character that felt such shame at these acts, like at these erotic acts that she felt intrinsically, overwhelmingly drawn to do, and in the moment was overcome by them. And then we had, what was her name, Simone or something? Yeah, Simone, who, Marcel was the one that I just talked about, and then we had Simone, who was just like flagrantly, openly, totally consumed by this erotic nature. I thought that it was really interesting. Didn't love it. I felt like it could have done and said a bit more. It was so entirely focused on the eroticism. I feel like there could have been more. I don't know how else to say that. That's just how I felt while I was reading it. We have Eudora Welty's One Writer's Beginnings, which is nonfiction, which was recommended to me by Aiden. Hello. Thank you for recommending this. I did really enjoy this. I loved hearing this writer's, how do I word this? I loved hearing her view of the world. What stuck with me the most about this book was how our author said that she lived kind of a sheltered life. She didn't necessarily live what she would dub as an exciting, dynamic, explosive life. And I'm contrasting it with Hemingway. I don't think she did in this book, but I'm contrasting it with Hemingway, right? So we have him who lived out all of these experiences and then went on to probably have all these emotional experiences from his actual experiences, and he went on to kind of write about these things. But that doesn't, and that's one way to be a writer, but that doesn't detract from the fact that your inner world and the way that you observe quiet, small things can make you a deep writer as well, kind of. I don't know how else to word that, but that's just what I've thought about after I read this. The Road by Cormac McCarthy. I really need to read Cormac McCarthy. He's like the living classic author, right? Like the best writer living today, supposedly, according to these things that people write online. I know this is going to be really heavy and sad. I can't wait for it. I think by the end of the year, if I haven't read Dostoevsky, Toni Morrison, and Cormac McCarthy, I'm going to be big mad. I'm going to be big mad at myself. I'm going to be frustrated, and it's going to be a situation. Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. I just need to read this. I really feel like I'm going to love this. It's a satire. Love satires. Kurt Vonnegut. This is one of his favorite books. Anything Kurt Vonnegut says to read, you bet your butt I'm going to read it. The Notebooks of Malte Laurids Brigg. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. It's by Rilke, and this is his novel. I read his poetry, his Book of Hours, sitting over there. Love Poems to God. Stunning. You don't need me to say that, but this is stunning. Well, I already started this, and I didn't feel connected to it in any way, shape, or form. But I made it about 30 pages into this. I will continue with it, but I have no opinion on this thus far. If Beale Street Could Talk by James Baldwin. This is something else that I'm going to be upset with myself if I haven't read by the end of the year. I loved Giovanni's Room last year, and I need to read more Baldwin. Like his words. We have The Three Philosophies of Life by Peter Kreeft, which is talking about the philosophical ideas in different books in the Bible. So Ecclesiastes, life is vanity. Job, life is suffering. Song of Songs, life is love. So some philosophy. And then last but not least, let's go over here. We have Angela's Ashes, which is about an autobiography about this about our author growing up in Ireland. And I'm really excited. Or it's a memoir. I don't know. Yeah. Autobiography, memoir. Wow. I'm confusion. What's the difference? Is there one? Okay. Well, I want to read Angela's Ashes. That is what's on my list. Who knows what I will actually read from it? I had all the intentions to read all of them. I really did. / I'm being realistic and know it's not going to happen at this point because I just kind of know it. That's the vibe. But we're hoping. I don't know. Who cares? Who cares? Life is short. Life is short. We're all going to die. Nothing really matters anyway. So that's my list. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Love you so much. Bye.